Hi everybody, and thanks again to Mark and Krona and to Porrick, who will be facilitating the workshop later on with myself and Krona and Mark also in attendance. If any of you want to join the workshop, please click into the link there to join the Miro board that Porrick put into the chat box. So I'll do my best in 25 minutes to give you a brief overview of blockchain, a primer. Any questions, you can email me, follow up, or if you have any queries, you can send me later on following this session. So this is part of all, as Mark was saying, a radical sustainability lab initiative in conjunction with a Blockchain Ireland Week community event, which we're hosting here today. Just a bit of background to myself. I'm a lecturer here in the engineering department in robotics and automation. I've been researching and lecturing in blockchain since 2014, when it was really novel and new. It's great to see it mature to a level, and having been up at Blockchain Ireland Week yesterday, it's great to see the showcase of all the events that were up there on use cases and so on. I'm also the chair of the Blockchain Education Innovation Skills Group, so I was appointed to that in February, so it's great to kind of lead a great working group there. If anyone is interested in joining that working group, please also send me an email after. If you want further details about my own research into blockchain, you can visit the hyperlink there. I'm also have this blockchain for business. It's funny, when I started lecturing on blockchain, I really didn't have anything to give students or have a baseline from a business perspective all the way back in 2018. So I kind of compile this together with various aspects, and there'll be a new edition coming out in the new year, which updated cases on blockchain. As I said yesterday, I was up at Blockchain Ireland Week, so I was part of an education skills panel, really great panel there. Panelists with a really great discussion on the gaps needed, and it kind of coincided as well with our launch of a new Blockchain for Leaders course that we are running here in the ATU online for leaders. It's 3 modules. It's in conjunction with ICT SkillsNet, and it's kind of suited around postgraduates or people working in that. It's kind of a micro credential where you can do one set of 10 credits, from September to December, and return then whenever you want to and complete the other 2 modules if you want to achieve the certificate. So I was delighted to announce that also during Blockchain Ireland Week. So in terms of this session here, a couple of learning goals: going to define and review how blockchain works, going to look at the features of blockchain technology which differentiate it from every other technology out there, going to review how blockchain technology works, but most importantly, kind of give you a few use cases which are aligned with today's kind of workshop aims and objectives around sustainability and design thinking. So defining blockchain. I don't know if this guy rings a bell. He's the founder of DigiCash. He wrote, and all the way back in 1982, he wrote a paper on blind signatures. So he came up with the idea that, in the future, people would be able to send the payments anonymously online. They would be untraceable. He set up this company around this idea in the 90s. Unfortunately for him, the convergence of technologies just hadn't reached what it was later on in the later 2000s. And unfortunately, that company went bust. But the idea that he came up with, in this paper that you can freely look at, is the idea of blind signatures for untraceable payments, and which is kind of the idea that underpinned Bitcoin. And essentially, this idea of blockchain, it's all about time stamping. And this paper, all the way back in 1981 by Haber and Stornetta, kind of came up with the idea that, which is kind of a prototypical version of what powers most blockchains today, that any transaction is chronologically added to a chain of data, and this idea that it's immutable and you can verify, and there's provenance because it's time stamped on the blockchain. So it's not necessarily new, and this is why people say blockchain isn't necessarily a new technology. When you look at David Chaum's paper on the untraceable payments all the way back in 1982 to Staber's paper, Haber and Stornetta's paper on time stamping. In terms of blockchain defined, simple definition, there's many definitions out there. But for this definition, it's a system of recording information in a way that makes it difficult or impossible to change, hack, or cheat the system. A blockchain is essentially a digital ledger of transactions that are duplicated and distributed across the entire network of computer systems on the blockchain. So essentially, it's a digital ledger. everyone has access, a real-time view access to the transactions. No one can take those transactions off. It's a real-time record, historical record. If you think of it as an online Excel shareable sheet that you're working on, if you've been working on a cell and next thing you see someone coming in and they're working on a cell. But unlike this, the Excel sheet there, you can't delete the data. And like the Excel sheet, you can see the modifications or the transaction histories all along for that Excel sheet. In terms of the origins of the first kind of real use case, the first real use case for blockchain was Bitcoin. This idea of a digital cryptocurrency. It was first announced all the way back in 2009. This Bitcoin white paper was released. It's only 9 pages. A lot of the times when I'm teaching blockchain, I get my students to read it, just throw it at them coldly, just see what they make out of it. It was followed by, the first open source Bitcoin client, and it was kind of created by this pseudonym character called Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't really know who they are. Satoshi mined the first block. It's called the Genesis block on the blockchain. He rewarded himself favorably with 50 Bitcoins. I don't know how much that is worth today. It would have been worth a considerable amount in the past, and it's probably worth still a good bit today, but really interesting white paper. But essentially this white paper tells us that cryptocurrencies up to that point, the idea of double spending was problematic, and blockchain came along, and as we saw with timestamping and the idea of sending untraceable payments, and they converged. This guy Satoshi converged it all together to make Bitcoin what it is today, one of the most widely used, globally used cryptocurrencies out there in the market. I'm often asked so anytime I'm presenting on blockchain or organizations are presenting on blockchain, they have to differentiate what differentiates from legacy systems or any other systems out there. This table usually does a good job in terms of identifying the core characteristics which differentiate blockchain from every other technology out there. You can have private and public blockchains, so a bit like private and public cloud. Bitcoin is public. A lot of organizations are moving into private blockchain because they don't really want outsiders having a look into the transactions, and a lot of people are saying that kind of goes against the idea of openness, decentralized. But that's what proves popular with business, the idea of private blockchains, the idea of mutability, the idea that once a record goes on there, it can't be taken off, the idea of transparency, like I said with the Excel sheet. If you go onto Bitcoin Explorer, you can see all the Bitcoin transactions that have ever been made in real time, and there's transactions, so it's widely open. Core innovation for me is the idea of smart contracts, and it aligns with the idea of automation. So automating something that's time consuming in a traditional world contract to something that's codified and executes without any human intervention. That for me, what I see a lot of organizations reaping benefits with blockchain technologies. There's decentralized consensus. So the workshop, and the problem that those who are attending the workshop will be posed with is the idea of we're used to dealing with intermediaries, like banking institutions. Along comes Bitcoin. There's no bank. You're dealing with transactions on a peer-to-peer network. It's decentralized. So that's fundamentally different to a centralized system. So in the workshop, we will be posing this task or challenge, and you will have to come up with an innovative solution to see how this might work in a decentralized manner. And the idea of distributed trust. So, those involved in Bitcoin and purchasing and selling it, it's a trustless system, as in there's no central authority. Its trust is based on the peer-to-peer network of those who are validating the transaction. So essentially, those are the characteristics which differentiate blockchain from any other technology. And the core point I want to take is Bitcoin was the first use case of blockchain. And a lot of time I advocate the legitimization of blockchain to say, yes, that was the first use case, but it is being utilized quite favorably in other circumstances, particularly in supply chains, where there are complex transactions, complex contracts, complex business processes which smart contracts can automate. And as with supply chains, as you know, they like access to real-time data. And that's one of the benefits that you get with blockchain: trustful, immutable access to real-time data. But the idea is Bitcoin was the first use case. Let's move away from the talk with blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Let's move to the talk of how blockchain, which secures Bitcoin, and it was its first use case, can be used using these characteristics to offer new value propositions for businesses and organizations. Just too quickly over, I could spend a year on this, but I won't. So proof of work, this was how you validate transactions. in a Bitcoin. So essentially, if you don't involve a bank to validate your transactions, you need a peer-to-peer network. So you've all probably heard the stories about miners. They solve cryptographic puzzles using huge rigs. The first to solve it gets a reward in Bitcoin. That's how a transaction is validated. From 2012, we saw the environmental sustainability issues with that. Over the last couple of years, new type of cryptocurrencies have moved towards this idea of proof of stake. So rather than involving, complex rigging and heavy artillery in terms of hard drives to kind of validate transactions, we moved to this concept of proof of stake. So it's according to how much coins or tokens that you would have, to kind of validate transactions. And we've seen the move from Ethereum from proof of work to kind of proof of stake. This now is probably what most blockchains revolve around. It's more environmentally friendly, and it's kind of a tiny bit more secure than the proof of work system there. But you can see the left and right. Proof of work is on the left. Mining capacity depends on computational power. Here, it depends how much you have in stake. Once users stake their amount, they get rewarded through further tokens. So it makes sense. And you can see the security aspects there at the bottom as well. So the benefits of blockchain: you get decentralization, you get enhanced privacy, you get enhanced security, huge efficiencies. Any of the companies I've been working with over the last couple of years, it's amazing to see them take this technology, which was originally used to secure blockchain, and derive value propositions in their supply chains, which I would never have thought the technology could accrue. We actually have two PhD students looking at technology assimilation and technology adoption in supply chains, and it's amazing to see the benefits companies are accruing. So basically, assimilation is all about the way you incorporate a technology in a supply chain and start to derive benefits you never thought the technology could actually accrue. So you see a multitude of benefits there. As I said, smart contracts are something I think which are huge benefit to blockchain technologies. Smart contracts are translations of an agreement, including the terms and conditions into computational code. Blockchain developers write this, contracts in a script, and usually it's in a program language like Java, C++, etc. Solidity. And the code basically, or the contract, translates a set of rules that are automatically executed and validated without any human intervention. So a straightforward example in the code might be, if X provides a service, Y pays for it. Just this diagram here. So I usually present this diagram to show you the old way of doing things or the current ways of doing things. So these are all entities involved in the supply chain. As you can see here, they're all using different ledgers. Some might be using Excel, some might be using Microsoft Access, some might be using, traditional paper. And let's go, for example, of buying and selling a house. So Party A is buying a house from Party B, and here in Ireland we know how complicated that process is. Even recently I heard a house property sale was held up because some third or fourth or fifth actor had lost a copy of a document which was sent via fax. Okay, as we know, and if you replicate all those inefficiencies along the supply chain with all these entities using different ledger systems, it's amplified to X amount of magnitude. So if essentially current systems, it's difficult to monitor asset ownership and transferred. It's inefficient, it's expensive, and it's vulnerable. So a lot of companies, considering using blockchain, would set up a proof of concept, and they would do something simple in complexity and simple in novelty. History has shown that technology failures have always shown that people jump straight into the water with a new technology in terms of high complexity and high novelty. But usually the pilot projects that I would have worked with, it's simple in complexity, simple in novelty. So essentially, once they run the pilot project, or they set up something like this. So as you can see, we have the same stakeholders, but this time they're on a private blockchain. It's permissioned, which means it's private, it's replicated. Everyone has access to same time, real-time view of the data. And essentially, it streamlines any of the cumbersome or burdensome paperwork or contracts or some processes that might be cumbersome, and they're all streamlined. And essentially, these participants, when they look into their blockchain, it's like a real-time view, user access. They can see the transactions happening. They can see the historical. There's consensus, there's provenance, there's immutability, and finality. So there is a company I was reading the Financial Times who are kind of trying to streamline the property buying and selling process in the UK, and they've advocated, and they've in their initial trial projects, they've demonstrated that they can reduce the process from months down to a week, which is really interesting. But from a lot of the projects I've worked with, it's incredible to see that when you move from something as messy as this with all those API integrations and different ledger systems, to something like this, the value propositions that they derive, are really interesting. I suppose I'll just skip that now. Essentially, this is a diagram I show, and this is sometimes the problem. The number one problem with blockchain is decoupling it from Bitcoin. There needs to be an awareness that this technology is legitimately being utilized in other scenarios, but from Bitcoin, but in the supply chain. Another fundamental issue is that sometimes people just can't get their head around this idea of moving from a traditional central processing network to a blockchain peer-to-peer network, which is decentralized and which people are using a proof of work consensus system or a proof of stake consensus system to validate transactions. And essentially, this process is called disintermediation. It really is a tough one for companies to get their head around, But once you see, so the blockchain was originally this black box type of technology, but companies now have molded it to their way of thinking. So with a private blockchain, it nearly resembles a central type of technology system, but with the characteristics that you would get with blockchain and the value proposition. But just to get your head around, it really is a complex thing for most people to get their heads around, going from a central system to a decentralized system and this process of disintermediation. And essentially, I'm often asked, what's the difference between a blockchain company and a non-blockchain company? Well, you can see it there. If the blockchain version of Airbnb, set up tomorrow, users are going to see the same thing in the non-blockchain version. But what essentially will be going on in the background is that the technology stack that the blockchain company are using is underpinned foundationally with blockchain. And that company and its users will leverage the benefits that blockchain provides. So anonymity, maybe security, tokenization, privacy, immutability, all those type of aspects and security. Because this is essentially the difference. There is no difference for the user. We don't ask, does it use cloud? Does it use a blockchain? What we are deriving are the benefits from the technology that the company is using. Okay, some use cases. So a big one here in Ireland at the moment is the idea of food forensics. So at the top, if you go back to the couple of slides, you have the various actors in a food supply chain all using different ledgers, different databases. So at the top there, let's say you have SuperValu and Malahide, someone, gets sick from a food product, and all of a sudden the food forensic process starts to go backwards. Where did this originate? And if you've ever walked out of a shop and saw the A4, page up on the wall, and you kind of go up and squint in to see it, and you say, did I buy that product? Didn't I buy it? It can be quite cumbersome to identify where this contaminated product happened. Let's fast forward if everyone is using a digital ledger blockchain system. Okay, it's all green now. And, let's say they have identified it that it was John Stone's beef. The IoT sensor picked up that there was a heat discrepancy, smart contract updated, and this item is taken off the shelf. Okay, they've identified that food forensics, which can take sometimes a couple of weeks, a month, can be now done in a couple of hours. And if you think about it, let's put the consumer on the blockchain also with a QR code on their phone. Let's say they scan, like if you look at Lidl and Aldi now, I think it's Lidl or Tesco, you get a digital receipt. So let's say the shop at the top identify where this product is originated, got contaminated, all of a sudden it identifies who bought it. Next thing on your phone, you get an update. Please do not eat this product. Okay, so this is what we're looking at in the future, fast forward, where food forensics and everyone on the blockchain will derive a number of value propositions. Another thing I'm often asked is, well, how do you get data up into a blockchain? The entities are the same as above in the previous one, but this time they're using different mechanisms to add data to blockchain. Some are using IoT sensors, some are using mobile phones, some are using QR codes, some are using RFID tags. The core thing is, if you're going to use blockchain technology, you need a supply chain, you need entities, but you need these data processes or endpoints and touch points so that people can actually upload data into the blockchain. But the big thing there, each person needs to be incentivized in the supply chain to use this, or there'll be nobody uploading data to the blockchain. I have about 5 minutes left, so the idea of energy monitoring is becoming a huge thing, and in conjunction to using it with AI, this study a study was conducted by Boston Consulting Group, which found that using AI can achieve 5 to 10% of the necessary reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, while also providing over 1 trillion to 2 trillion in value generated to additional revenues and cost savings by 2030. Blockchain can be used in the energy sector to provide decentralized energy trading, smart metering and billing, and enhanced grid management. The launch of Ethereum in 2015 allowed for smart contracts to be utilized within blockchain technology, opening the possibility of allowing peer-to-peer energy trading. So when coupled with AI-based prediction, this would allow for energy to be redistributed on a peer-to-peer basis, reducing the amount of energy waste that we currently experience. There's a company called PowerLedger, and this company are involved in this idea of P2P energy trading, and it's kind of really is a new, prospective, innovative exchange systems where individuals generate their own renewable energy, maybe through solar panels, and then share the excess energy that they generate at a given price or through a tokenization system with their local community. And PowerLedger is one of those type companies, and you can buy their token there. If you go on to the website above, they operate a POWR token, which can be used. This token is built as per the ERC20 Ethereum standards, so there's a license there, but it allows people to trade their excess energy that they generate on the platform, on the PowerLedger platform. So it really is an innovative use case. Another example is Provenance. It's all a part of the Sustainable Fashion 4.0. And essentially, I've been monitoring this company since 2018. It's really interesting to see how they've progressed, and I've even purchased goods off it just to see how it works. It really is the drive, the ethos of ethical fashion, and they basically, every product is equipped that, for example, I would have bought a pair of shoes, the box arrives, there's an NFC tag, I scan it, I can see where the product originated, I can see the remuneration that the producer and the manufacturer has been given, I can see the ethical products that have gone into making the product. So this idea of retracing everything along the life cycle of that particular product tells me and verifies to me there's quality assurance behind the products that they're selling, that they are truly sustainable. So if you get a chance, it really is a nice, interesting product to look at. So in terms of the use cases, food supply chains, food forensics, energy trading, the idea of getting energy from solar panels in your house, the idea of smart meters are coming in, but then the idea of that you can actually sell off the excess energy to your community to this type of tokenization, to the idea of fashion 4.0, where we're going away from super fast and fast fashion to this idea of, is the product I'm actually buying truly sustainable? Well, using blockchain technologies, there's that kind of provenance and proof and immutability that you can ensure that they are truly sustainable. And that's I'm dying for a bit of water, so that's whistle stop tour of blockchain, and I hope you enjoyed that.